there are 4 cameras in the room that are recording, and the technician was just out and indicated that when people are speaking, if you'd step up to the table and push the green button, he can record your voice. So he's in the back doing the recording. We are, as I mentioned, with HDR Engineering, and we are here to do a feasibility study in the downtown section of town. Let me first of all start out by telling you a little bit about HDR Engineering. We have offices here in Missoula on South Reserve Street. We've been here since about 1998. We have about 60 employees in Missoula, and most of them are engineers. We have an office in Billings as well. We have about 170 in the Billings office, again, primarily engineers. We are an employee-owned firm that is a global company. We have about 8,000 employees nationally, and we have several hundred offices. We are consistently ranked among the top 5 firms in the architecture, engineering, planning, and environmental communities. We are, like I say, located right here in Montana, but our mothership, so to speak, is in Omaha, Nebraska. I point this out because one of the things that we do have is we have experts all over the country that we can draw from if we have questions about anything. So if we need any help, we draw from experts all over the country. And in fact, one of our people working on this project is an economist, and she's in Ottawa. At any rate, having said that, we'll take a couple of minutes here and we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Mick Johnson. I'm the project manager for this project, and quick introduction and background. I'm a graduate of the University of Montana in 1980. I worked for the Department of Transportation, Montana Department of Transportation, for 30 years. I retired after 17 years as a district administrator in Great Falls, and I went to work for HDR in 2012. So I've been with HDR just a little over a year now, but I was with MDT for 30 years. So transportation and issues like this are not new to me at all. I have joining me today a team from both Missoula and outside of Missoula, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty here.
Lisa Fisher. I'm actually here in the Missoula office. I'm a transportation engineer. I'll be the deputy EPM for this project.
My name's W.D. Baldwin, and I'm a traffic engineer out of the Bellevue office. I've done a lot of work all over the Northwest and several projects here in Montana.
My name is Oliver Kuhne. I'm a planner and urban designer with a background in architecture. I'm out of the Portland, Oregon office, and my involvement in this project is going to be, I'm going to be looking at pedestrian and bicycle issues, and also at the aesthetics of the streetscape, urban design questions.
Having said that, we would just like to know a little bit about who's with us today. So I'm just going to go around the room and just ask you to identify yourself. Tell us what business you're with or which group you're with, and we all have an idea of what we're doing. Start right up here in front. Go ahead.
I'm Scott Waller with Midwest Management. We're a property management firm. We manage at this point a couple of properties that are potentially impacted both on project.
Okay.
I'm Dave Meinwald with Midwest Management also.
Thank you.
I'm Gary Hughes. I'm with First Security Bank. We have a property at 100 East Broadway.
Thanks, Gary.
My name is Todd Frank. I have the trail at 221 East Front Street. And on that commercial lease.
Currently living on the property for Rick Broadway, 206.
Melody Rock from the Missoula Economic Partnership and Active Downtown Association.
Welcome, Mel.
And Louise Schneider with High Property Management.
Thank you.
John Turma, the other my property management, and just recently retired from the Missoula Children's Theater.
Well,
Missoula Children's Theater, do you know?
hi.
When we go, Missoula Children's Theater, MCG, Center for the Performing Arts.
We'll be there this afternoon.
Not performing now. Matt Ellis, MSO Hub, I'm Megan Higgins, and co-chair of the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Welcome, Matt. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Jocko, I'm from Missoula Public Library, Facilities Payne, still on that.
Thank you.
Hugh Sheehy, I own the Higgins Building, 310 North Higgins, commercial.
Okay.
Kim Plankus Johns, I'm a
myself have and VP of Advocacy for Missoula Downtown Association.
Jim McDonald, I'm building 220, 222 Higgins, and I'm also an architect.
Brad Jantic, I'm Vice President General Counsel for Alps Corporation. We own the Florence Hotel at the corner of Higgins and Front Street.
Yep.
I'm Heidi Kendall, manager of the Children's Museum, which is at 225 West Front.
Mike Day, 275 West Main, Tangles. I'm here representing my wife, Kenzie, on that.
Thank you.
Todd Gass with the Missoula Redevelopment Agency.
Thanks, Todd. Thank you all for joining us today. Let me just give you a little bit of an explanation as to what the project is about, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the specifics of some of the things we're going to be doing. But one of our major goals here today is to understand what the community wants, what the businesses think this study should look like. So we're here to listen. We're going to do a lot of listening. But in the beginning, I want to explain that the Downtown Master Plan that was done in 2009 identified the conversion of the front and main couplet as one of the, if not the top priority in the 2000 Master Plan. That has been in there since 2009. The conversion of these couplets is by no means a new concept. This is something that has come up and been looked at both successfully and unsuccessfully many, many times. So all parts of the United States have looked at this process, and in fact, it is being discussed and has been discussed in many towns in Montana, not just Missoula. I come from Great Falls, and over the past 10, 15 years, they've been discussing it. Billings has gone from one ways to two ways and back to one ways. It's been back and forth. Helena is another area where they had a couplet that they turned part of the one way into a walking mall at the south end of Last Chance Gulch. So they turned part of their couplet into a walking mall. So many, many places have looked at this, and many, many places have done some things about it. There are numerous communities that have successfully changed a couplet back to two-way streets. So I want you to know that this isn't something new, and what we have been deemed to do is we've been asked to review the operation of that one-way couplet in downtown Missoula and to analyze the effects of converting that back to two-way. So we intend to start with developing a purpose and need based upon the input that we get from folks like you. We want to know what you think. We need downtown, you need downtown, and we want to find out what those goals of yours are, especially as major property owners in the downtown. And in cooperation with all of the stakeholders and other groups, we're going to be meeting with other groups as we go, we're going to come up with a feasibility study and a recommendation. So I want you to know where we're headed. Over the next 2 or 3 days, we have several kickoff meetings to discuss the project, to receive input about the project, to review the existing conditions. That's an important key in this process, is to figure out what exists downtown, why things aren't as desirable as you may want them to be, things like that. We have 3 meetings today. We're going to discuss with several different groups the alternatives that they would like to see explored. We've received input prior to the meetings, and since we've had the first meeting this morning, we've also already started receiving emails, and we have a couple of pretty key players here. The government, of course, is a big player. We have Montana Department of Transportation. We have traffic people, because this couplet connects to major MDT facilities on both ends, and Higgins in the middle, kind of the middle of the project, is also an MDT route. Additionally, the front and Main Street are urban aid eligible federal oversight projects. They're federal oversight streets. So those two streets actually come under some federal guidelines. So we need to make sure that as we go through the meetings and we're having discussions with all of you folks, and as we start to do the work on the projects, we include discussions with Montana Department of Transportation and make sure that the Federal Highway Administration is acceptable to the changes that may or may not occur. So we're going to look at things like how changes might affect commercial business. We're going to look at residential property. We have meetings with residential owners this evening. Public transit. You know, you have quite a public transit system here in the Met, so it's really quite an asset to your community. How is this going to affect that? Motorized and non-motorized. I hesitate because this morning I used the term non-motorized and that's not appropriate, I was told. So anyway, motorized, non-motorized, safety, parking, air quality. We have to be concerned about air quality, and the reason for that is because Missoula is in an area where there has been in the past an air quality issue. And one-way conversions was often a means of reducing emissions. So we have to be careful. Now, I'm not overly concerned about that, and one of the reasons is because the majority of the air quality emission issues have been taken care of through emission controls on vehicles, et cetera. The other thing is in this particular case, the downtown area is just a small, tiny fraction of a portion of the air quality issue in the entire valley. So we'll watch it, we're going to monitor it, but it's not as big as we may want to think. We have to look at intersection connectivity. We have to look at future development plans. There are many, many people that have plans for the downtown, expansions in the downtown, parking in the downtown, and many, many others. So one of our first tasks, as I mentioned, is to do some analysis of the existing conditions. We're going to look at developing a baseline so that we understand the volumes of traffic, the accident histories, the volumes of pedestrians, potential uses downtown. Much of the information that we're going to get is currently available through the transportation plan that you've put together here, through analysis of many, many other communities that have attempted to do this. And so we're going to do a baseline and do an analysis of that baseline. And if we need to come up with something that is unavailable or we currently don't find, then we'll gather that information. If we have to have origin, destination, or things like that, we'll gather that information. For us to be able to make the best recommendation we can to the community. We intend to work with the city staff. Dave was here this morning. MRA, of course, they're the key player. Developers, interest groups, et cetera. So we're going to forecast what we believe will be future traffic demand and future transit needs in the downtown area. And we're going to talk a little bit about economic conditions. Now, I mentioned that our economist is in Ottawa, and this morning we hooked her up on the phone, and for several reasons she didn't hear what the audience was saying, and they couldn't understand her very well. So rather than do that, I'm going to just go over briefly what our economist is going to do. She is going to do an overview of the current economic conditions in the area that we are doing the feasibility study on. We're going to see what businesses are impacted in the area. We're going to look at the general operations of those businesses, people in the downtown. We're going to summarize a range of realistic expectations. We're going to look at residential potential and residential development downtown. I know there are several projects in the works. And additionally, she's going to do a review of some of the many communities that have already converted from one-way to two-way, and find out what the impacts to those communities were in a general qualitative type of analysis. So she's going to do that for us so that we can give you maybe a global economic look at what the change might do for downtown. We're also going to look at traffic management. We have traffic people here because several of the things that are important downtown include the intersection geometry and the turning movements, safety. Look at the number of accidents that are downtown, pedestrian problems downtown or pedestrian accidents downtown, non-motorized mobility, both pedestrians and bicyclists, public transits and residential usage. We want to improve, one of the goals is to improve the linkage between employment, housing, there's a major cultural center in the center of town, commercial components, and potentially enhance the non-motorized use of the corridor. We intend to have 2 public meetings where we're just going to open them to the public. In this particular case, everybody in the room was invited. We did that specifically for a couple of reasons, but we're going to have a couple general meetings. One of them will be after we gather all the baseline information. We'll explain what the baseline looks like to the public, and then we will have a second public meeting when we have a draft study prepared to let everybody have a comment on. So we'll have those 2 things and those 2 public meetings, and we'll be working on this study for the next 12 months. So last but certainly not least will be the final recommendation, the alternatives. We're going to include some demand forecasts, some conceptual designs, and probable cost estimates. We also have a task to assist with the identification of sources of funding for the improvements. So our schedule is very, very busy for the next 12 months, but a major component are these kickoff meetings that we've held this morning, and we've got 2 or 3 this afternoon, and 1 this evening, and a couple tomorrow morning, and then we are headed to Helena to meet with the MDT traffic engineers in Helena and make sure that the designs of, or the models that we're going to prepare will meet the needs of MDT for analysis of their intersections. Having said that, I'm going to have a couple of the people here, first of all, identify the areas that we're talking about, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our traffic modeling and our traffic stuff, and then Oliver's going to give us a little bit of information about the non-motorized and aesthetic ideas. Lisa?
I think Mick kind of pointed everything out, but just so you guys know the extent of the project, we're going to start here on Orange Street, and it's going to go all the way to Madison. And so we also have Higgins in there, which is a major intersection, and we will be showing, we're going to examine every single intersection in and out here, and there's a couple key areas that we'll definitely want to look at when we put some potential intersection layouts, especially for the Orange and Madison connections.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yep.
Debbie Dean?
Yeah, as Mick mentioned, I'm doing the traffic.
Turn it on.
As Mick mentioned, I'm doing the traffic for this, and essentially what we're doing is the traffic modeling, the operational analysis. It's a one-way couplet right now, and so how traffic flows is one way. When we switch it to 2-way, it's obviously going to function somewhat different. So we need to understand, the backups, the queues, and things like that as we look at a variety of alternatives. So the group I'm working with will be working with MDT, with city staff, with the existing models, and utilizing that information to try and build models so we can understand the differences and the impacts associated with those. Not only looking at, just the traffic modeling, but the importance of safety. I think that's been mentioned several times. We talked about it this morning as well. The pedestrian concerns. We heard a lot of things this morning earlier about bicycle, pedestrian interactions and operations. And so we were even taking notes specifically about problem locations that we would need to address some concerns or think about as we're going forward with our consideration of alternatives now, but even as we go forward with any designs that might come out of that. So that's what I'm focused on.
Thanks, Debbie.
And then, as I mentioned earlier, I sort of have 2 hats. One of them is the bicycle pedestrian side, and the other hat is the aesthetics, urban design side of things. And so my role as the one non-engineer on the team is going to be to make sure that the project it's not just a traffic and transportation project. We're looking at the right of way, basic from building phase to building phase, which is important for business viability and all that. And at the end of the day, all of us are pedestrians. Whether you walk from a mile away or whether you park a half a block away and then walk from the parked car to the store, you're a pedestrian at some point in that process. And so the last few feet as a pedestrian need to be as good as the rest of the experience. And so my job is to make sure whatever we do on the transportation side of things is going to be reflected also in the placemaking and the quality of the space aspect.
Thanks, Oliver. Now, we have invited you here specifically for several things. First of all, we'd like to know from you, what room do you think there are for improvements in the downtown area? What concerns do you have, either pro or con? We're not here to make judgment at this point, but what concerns do you have? What do you see downtown that we need to be concerned about, focus on, look at, things like that? And if you're envisioning, as the business owners and the owners of property in the downtown area, if you're looking at potential development, we would like to know if you will share that with us, because that does have an impact on what we are doing. So if you're willing to share that, we would like to know that. I was given, in the earlier meeting this morning, I was given a fellow's name at CTA that's working on a building downtown, and we're going to go meet with him and discuss what his expansion is for that particular building. And the reason that I found this as an administrator for MDT for many years, if I bring the business community or the landowners, the property owners to a separate meeting, oftentimes they will be a little more candid than they will in a public setting. And the reason is because even though you just own the small shop on the street, you don't want to make any customer upset with a statement you made. So with that, we try to open this up as much as we can, but we are willing to meet with you away from the meeting here, call you up, send us an email, whatever. So having said that, what I'd like to do is I'd like for you to come up and give us any ideas that you might have as to things we need to be concerned about with this particular project. And so if you'll come up to the microphone and do that, we would be very, very happy. And if you choose not to do that, but you do want to make a statement, we have cards, and we'd be glad to come over and meet with you tomorrow.
Can they state whether or not they're a property or a business owner?
Sure, that'd be great. Who wants to be first? Mike. Yeah. Give us a commercial too while you're at it, Mike.
All right, thanks, it's on. My name's Mike Day, and my wife's Kim Deonda. She owns Tangles Hairstyling at 275 West Main. She's been in business for 22 years, and our biggest concern at this time is some of the initial planning documents showed a reconfiguration of her parking lot. And that is of concern as she owns the building and the land, and that parking is very valuable to the viability of her business and as a benefit that she offers her employees, that they can actually work downtown and have their own parking space. Okay. So that, at this time, that's our largest concern with what's going on here.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that, sir. Don't be shy.
I'm Karma Gilligan, and I own the property at the corner of Main and Ryman, where Red's Bar and the Walking Mustache is. You take away our parking, and you take away our business. So it's critical that you leave our parking there. Yeah, that's probably the main thing. Any questions?
I do have one. Do you get a lot of pedestrian traffic? Do you get walk-in traffic,
Yes.
bicycle traffic? Yeah.
I get some.
Okay.
You know, for lunch especially, you're going to get walk-in traffic.
Yes.
And a lot of our employees have bikes, but we have bike racks. But we also need the drive-up traffic.
Okay.
Because they have a lot of takeout.
Oh, okay.
So
Excellent.
we need that.
Thank you.
So I'm Melanie Brock. I'm not a property owner, but I worked for a year at the Downtown Association, which is on Main Street. And I was almost hit twice crossing that Washington and Main Street intersection. I don't know if you've already heard about this today, but because of that dogleg and the one-way street that goes next to the library, it's a very dangerous intersection. We saw a pedestrian hit in that intersection. You see near misses all the time. I literally had to slam my hand on the hood of the car as it was turning into me in the crosswalk. It's very dangerous because in the one-way configuration now, cars only look up the street, they're not looking down, and that's where the one pedestrian crosswalk is. And the other, the eastern side of that intersection, there isn't a pedestrian crosswalk right by the library, and there's a lot of traffic there with young families going in and out of the library. So any attention you could focus on that particular intersection, I think it's one of the most dangerous on the Front and Main streets. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Melanie.
Hi, my name is Todd Frank. I own the Trailhead, which is at 221 East Front. I'll share a similar story to Melanie's. In June of 2004, I was crossing Higgins on Front Street from Macy's to the Florence Hotel and was hit by a vehicle turning left from Front Street on to Higgins. So going east on Front at that point, turning north onto Higgins. I was walking across the street looking at oncoming traffic coming down south on Higgins and was blindsided by a truck and spent a couple of days in the hospital and broke my back. And so I have personal hands-on experience about how dangerous the intersections are in downtown Missoula. So, you know, I support the concept of turning these around. If it does nothing else than slow folks down and allow them to sort of take a little more of a pedestrian speed through the downtown area. As a business owner, I think that makes a lot of sense. We want to see a more pedestrian and friendly environment so that people are comfortable getting out of their cars and walking around. You know, for our store, we are in the second block of Front Street east of Higgins, and so by the time people get to the front of our store, they're clipping along, you know, at or above the speed limit in general. And you know, we have a children's museum directly across the street, so we get a fair bit of cross-street traffic. You know, I think we, of course, are very concerned about preserving the parking in front of our location, even though we have a great structure right next door. People still like to be able to pull up in front of the building and park. So I think in doing whatever kind of a reconstruction is done, parking, I think, as Karma said, is going to be something that all downtown people are going to be concerned about. I guess the other thing, just intuitively, that I think a lot of us business owners downtown are concerned about or want to see is how those transitions at each end go. You know, how's it going to work? Whether or not it takes your parking lot away, or you know, just exactly how it's going to funnel traffic into and out of the downtown area, because we obviously want people to be able to easily get into the downtown core, get out of their car, and spend some time in the downtown area. Right. So, thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth from the library. Because of the position that the library has situated between the two one-ways, I'd say that access and navigation into the library is an issue. We do have a parking lot that's dedicated to the library. However, you can watch the people of Missoula struggle as they attempt to gain access to that parking lot because of the current configuration. So the library is in favor of trying to improve that access. If you look at, say, the configuration of Washington and North Adams, and as their access points onto Front and onto Main, I know this sounds silly, but there's actually no physical way to circle the building right now if you were looking for parking. It's impossible. It's not. And so you see people frustrated and angry, and I hate to harp on parking because I actually feel like your destination will bring people regardless of whether parking is available or not. So I'm not an advocate of prioritizing parking over creating a destination environment, and I think that's the function of the library. I think regardless of whether there's parking or not, people would still come. That being said, our traffic flow is increasing. You're going to see more people using the library than less people. And right now, our current building is underserving the people of Missoula. So there's an intention to provide something that is more in keeping with the population level. So we're looking at something more like 3 times the size that we currently have. And this is a 10-year plan for the library. So if you envision something that is much larger than what's currently there on that site, that would have a definite impact upon the way that the egress in those streets and the kind of traffic flow that you'd be seeing.
Are your potential plans public yet?
Are they what?
Are they public?
We've had public forums already to talk with the people of Missoula about the interest and the need. We've done evaluations with the local architectural firm. We have a feasibility study ourselves, which is available on our website.
Okay, that's, yeah.
So you can take a look at that. It's all
Sure.
preliminary because obviously something like that is a huge investment for the people of Missoula. A positive investment. It would enhance the downtown area, but that's our goal, is to stay downtown and remain central to the
Have you
city.
seen the one in Billings? Have you seen the new one in Billings?
I have not.
I thought it was a federal building. Anyway, that's
Well, right now we're at 40,000 feet, and the feasibility study actually said that a city the size of Missoula deserves about 120,000. That's how large the library should be for a city of this population and for the service needs that's required. But we get anywhere up to 2,000 people a day walking in our doors. So
Good
whether
for
they
you.
drove or walked
Yeah,
or
right.
took the bus or parked or whatever, that's how many people you see coming in on a daily basis.
Thank you so much. Sir?
I'm Dick Reingold. I'm the general manager at NBC Montana. It's great to follow the library. It's a fabulous Missoula institution, so thank you. And I also want to say, if there are any DISH subscribers here, we went back on DISH at 10:45 last night.
Oops.
Thank you. But that's not, actually, I came because I was asked. We as a business are really indifferent. So either way, we don't see our business, our news crews, our activity being impacted. We support whatever direction you decide to go.
Are the dishes at your building currently in use?
Oh, yeah, you bet.
Okay, the big ones are,
You know, some of them are maybe dormant. I'd have to check exactly. There might be a couple that are industrial art at this point, but we still use those dishes. Yeah, we do not, that's how we get our network programming, our syndicated programming, and so forth. You bet.
okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Heidi Kendall with the Children's Museum, which is at 225 West Front. Not the same children's museum that Todd mentioned, which is the science, what's it called? Spectrum, which is part of the university. They are a recent addition to Missoula. We've been in our location for 7 years. And my main interest is in the pedestrian issues as well. We have a lot of visitors who come to the Children's Museum on their bicycles, with strollers, bicycles with,
Carts.
What's the word? I can't think of the word.
Trailers?
Kids in the back, yes,
Yeah.
trailers, kids in the back. And so there's a lot of pedestrian activity. There are a lot of people also who come in their cars with their strollers in the back and, go a couple of blocks as pedestrians. Our area is also a little on the scary side, partly because we're really near the carousel, and a lot of people come to the Children's Museum and the carousel. There is a lot of pedestrian traffic with small children around there. The one-way street, as Melanie said, people tend to look the way the traffic is coming and not the other way for the pedestrians. So I think that's just a huge issue. And I park for for work on the other side of Orange Street. Orange Street is very scary as a pedestrian because people are going really fast. You know, it's a major arterial. So I would love to see that whole area just maybe signed better for pedestrians. I think there's a lot of work that can be done there. And I also am kind of indifferent. I don't know if it makes a difference really whether it's one way or two way, as long as it's safe.
Okay.
Thanks.
Heidi, thank you.
I'm Hugh Sheehy. I own the Higgins Building, corner of Higgins and Main Street. What I want to speak about is the access and the parking. I think that, you know, for the health of the downtown, we have to entice customers to come down, and I see that as our biggest problem. And I think the one-way street makes access, particularly to the Main Street side of my building, a difficult proposition for customers. And so I am in favor of going back to two-way. I think that would be better. But a bigger issue, I think that it's been spoken to already, is the parking. You know, the parking structures are there, but I think a customer that wants to do a half-hour run into a shop likes to park on the street. So by going to two-way street, if we go from the slant parking to parallel parking, then we lose spaces. And I wanted to bring that up, that I think it's important to preserve the parking on the street as much as we can. Thank you.
Thanks, you.
I'm Libby with Pie Property Management, but I actually have a comment that's more of a personal comment in response to the parking discussion. The angled parking, I am not at all a fan of. Driving down Main Street, I was hit by somebody while I was driving who crossed my lane to get into an angled parking spot. I was on a motorcycle, ended up over the car on the other side. But I think anytime we have a driving situation or a parking situation where the danger is coming from behind you, it creates a whole nother level of awareness that I don't know that people are prepared to take on, especially when you have a community like Missoula that brings in people from not only all over the state at the University of Montana, but all over the country to come here who aren't used to that, you know, oh, watch out for this intersection, watch out for that intersection. They're really quite frightening. So I guess when dealing with the parking issue, I don't know, I keep in mind that well, not only that, but when you're in an angled parking, you are blind until you are in traffic when you're getting out of it too. So those couple of concerns, I'd like you guys to keep in mind.
We'll definitely look at you know, a number of different options, and it's on there. And that's a fair comment. Also for bicyclists, angled parking can be quite tricky. The same reason, if you're backing out, it's much harder to see. There's some communities, Seattle and Portland, for instance, have dabbled around with back-in angled parking, which you know, addresses some of these issues, but there's some other issues with just acceptability. People are not used to it, so it's a little tricky in that way. But we'll look at the options. And yeah, so I forget the name of the gentleman who spoke before you, but parallel parking, of course, has, you know, less. I mean, there's fewer spaces in the same amount of roadway length, so there are some disadvantages there. So we'll look at the pros and cons of all these options.
John Torma. In one capacity or another, I've been working downtown for over 25 years, and I love it. I wouldn't want to really work anywhere else. I really like our downtown. With what I know about couplets as opposed to two-way streets, and I don't pretend to know everything about it, but with what I know, I really am in favor of this conversion. I really hope it happens. I think part of the problem with couplets in Missoula is we don't have very many one-way streets. So people unless they're really paying attention to what they're doing, and God knows we should every time we get behind a wheel or on a motorcycle, like my daughter or I both do. Especially when you're on a motorcycle, you are always watching for that person in the right-hand lane. You're not only watching their car, you're looking for their eyeballs. Because when you see someone over there going, you know they're going to turn right in front of you because they're not in the right lane to go where they think they want to go. Or we're talking about parking downtown. You know, parking as often as at a premium, somebody's going down the right-hand lane or the left-hand lane, and where's the parking space that they all of a sudden see? You know, they don't always take the time that they need to take to turn on their blinkers, make sure nobody's in their blind spot, you know, so, you know, because of the fact that we don't have very many one-way streets, I do hope they change. You know, I know there's conversation about 5th and 6th also. I would love to see those streets change to two-way as well. I just think it will slow people down, and God knows it doesn't take us very long to get all the way across town. The difference between on a slow day and a fast day is about 10 minutes. You know, so I think what we can do with the configuration of our streets to keep people at a more human speed when they're in their four-wheel vehicle would be a really good thing to do. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I'm coming back up because I don't know, I have been here for 50 years, and the reason that they put in the one-way streets, because there were so many accidents of 5 streets coming together in one spot. So that was why they went to one-way.
Hi again, my name's Brad Dantic. I represent Alps Corporation. We own the Florence building. And so we have the pleasure of actually sitting at both of our streets. At front kind of goes two-way right there.
Yeah.
And Higgins goes two-way. What we observe, I've worked in the Florence building since 1992. So, 20-some years sitting in the Florence building. There's a couple things we observe. Incidentally, we're indifferent as to how this project goes forward. We're neither supportive of a one-way nor supportive of a two-way. We just trust that there'll be a thorough study and the best decision will be made. But what we do observe, a couple things. One, we have roughly, I'm going to round numbers, 200 users of the Florence building that come to our building every day. Parking is critical for us as the building owner to be able to find tenants and for our tenants to find customers. And so there's discussions about whether we have angled parking or not. It's important that however the solution maximizes parking to the greatest extent possible, because frankly downtown Missoula faces a parking problem. And so hopefully this project may integrate with some parking projects that are continuing ongoing. The second observation we'd make is that we have the luxury of looking out our window and watching cars try to make left-hand turns off of Higgins. During lunch hours, I see lines, backed up cars trying to turn left onto Main. It goes all the way down our block and starts to back up into the bridge. So whatever, if we're going to go to this two-way scenario, both on Front and on Main, I think you guys need to consider somehow giving them access off of Higgins to be able to get, turn left from Higgins onto Main or turn left onto Front. Those are big problems. They're traffic problems in the afternoons at lunchtime. And incidentally, was that Todd? Yeah. It's amazing. I have actually watched a month ago a pedestrian get hit doing the exact same thing, and it was not 2 days later I almost got hit.
There's a slight adjustment in the angle of Front Street at Higgins.
Yeah.
And when you make a left from Front onto Higgins, stay right in the blinds as you're coming across the sidewalk. The car turning, you're right in the blind spot
of the driver.
The guy said, I never even saw it. I'm like, how did you not see it?
And that's the reaction, because it's right there. You can't, it's just wide open. But the reaction is, how did you not see me? I'm right here in the crosswalk. Those are our comments. We hope you find a solution for those left-hand turns and maximize parking to the greatest extent possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you.
Matt Ellis, I'm going to put on my master plan hat because I spoke earlier today and I don't want to be redundant, but there are two projects that I know of that are happening on Main Street that you might want to check in with. They're pretty dynamic. They're both on that corner of Patty and Main. One's in the Firestone building and the other's on the opposite corner, which would be the Bird Lady lot. I'm not sure where they're both at. I know the Firestone one's moving forward pretty rapidly. The Firestone one is Carl Pozowitz from Paradigm as the architect. I don't know who's involved in the other one, but those are two that I know will be impacted by this.
Thanks, Matt.
Michael McGill, MCT Center for the Performing Arts. One of my concerns is that our parking lot actually has both its entrance and exit on Main. So if we went to two-way, we would end up with a left turn into the entrance, which we don't actually have at this point. And so that might be, it might back up traffic that would be headed east, I would believe. As far as just the design process and the things that you discover from other communities that have converted or not, I'd just be very interested in the economic impact of it going to two-way as opposed to the one-way. We have probably less parking than we need there. Parking is always an issue. We also have a large pedestrian cross-section for a children's theater. A lot of people have to park quite a ways away in order to get to the theater. So the pedestrian crossing on Broadway is probably the worst part of it because that's a pretty fast area of town. But I would be really interested in what we can do for those customers and patrons.
Thanks, Michael. Wow. Thank you. You guys have been wonderful. This came up a little while ago, and I just wanted to kind of give you a short, quick, maybe history lesson on one-way streets, and that is the one-way street came about at about the time of the interstate program, which was the 40s and 50s. The interstate actually started in the 50s. The construction, it was actually conceived in the 40s. And the interstate system was a Roosevelt idea that was really taken by Dwight D. Eisenhower and became a reality. And it was his military background that I understand was part of the issue of one-way streets. First of all, there was always the threat, and if you went to school during that era, if you've ever crawled under your desk because of a bomb attack, or we were trained all the time to get under your desk when the bombs hit. So, but the idea was to try to get traffic out of the communities as quickly as possible. One-ways do that. One-ways move traffic very, very quickly. One-way is also, in the time of heavier emissions, were much more, much less prone to pollution. And that's because you can sequence a one-way street so that you can start at one end and at the other and never stop. Even though you may have went through 6 or 7 signals, you'll never stop. So a stopped idling car is what used to cause a lot of pollution. That's been somewhat taken care of by emission standards of today. So those two things kind of led to one-way streets. Plus, in the 50s and 60s, people were moving away from the center of town. They worked downtown, but they wanted to go home quickly. One-ways do that. One-ways are pretty quick. But from the business standpoint, It's not always necessary to see the car go by at 40 miles an hour. They didn't even see your neon sign. So things have changed, and many, many communities are now going back to two-way streets. They're examining two-way streets. Some of the things that they've done, there was a mention here a little bit ago about left turners. Sometimes you forego left turns. You've got signs up all over town where there are no left turns currently. And if you don't have a lot of left turning movements, you don't have the backup that you often have. But I leave that to a traffic expert to determine that. But we have heard really, really good comments from this group. I appreciate your time. Todd, did you have anything to add? Todd Gass is with Missoula Redevelopment.
Appreciate your turnout.
Yeah.
Put that we're getting this good input that we need to hear. So thanks for coming.
Thank you all. We appreciate your taking time out of your busy days to assist us with this study and to maybe make Missoula just this much better. Can't get much better, but maybe just a little. Thank you. Yeah, there is a sign-in sheet out there if you would like for us to email you, or if you'd like to contact us. We have business cards around and things like that, so please sign in and let us know where you're from. We'll stay in touch with you. Thank you for your information.